In the early hours of July 6, 2024, a 911 call was placed from a quiet Springfield neighborhood. Sonya Massey, a 36-year-old woman and mother of two, reached out to the authorities, concerned about a potential prowler near her home. But what unfolded in the minutes that followed would end in tragedy, with Sonya losing her life at the hands of those who were supposed to protect her. This is the story of Sonya Massey, a woman whose life was tragically cut short by Illinois Sheriff's Deputy Sean Grayson in her own home. As we delve into the details of this heartbreaking case, we'll uncover the disturbing sequence of events that led to her death, examine the systemic failures within law enforcement that contributed to this tragedy, and explore the implications for communities across the nation. What exactly happened on that fateful night? How did a call for help turn into a fatal encounter? And most importantly, why did it happen? As we piece together the facts, we'll confront uncomfortable truths about police conduct, racial bias, and the urgent need for reform in how officers respond to those experiencing mental health crises. Sonya's story is more than just a tragic incident. It's a stark reminder of the ongoing issues within our justice system, issues that continue to plague Black communities across America. Stay with us as we uncover the tragic story of Sonya Massey, a case that has ignited a nationwide call for justice and accountability. To truly understand the gravity of what happened on the night of July 6, 2024, we must first know who Sonya Massey was and what led her to that tragic encounter. Sonya Massey was a devoted mother to two teenagers, a daughter, a sister, and a friend to many. She was known in her community as a kind-hearted and spiritual woman, someone who faced her challenges with a resilience rooted deeply in her faith. However, in the months leading up to her death, Sonya had been struggling with significant mental health issues. Her family described her as someone who had become increasingly paranoid, often feeling that she was being followed or targeted by unseen forces. On multiple occasions, Sonya had reached out for help, both to her family and to law enforcement. In the days leading up to her death, there were at least 3 separate interactions with local authorities, including a distressing 911 call made by Sonya's mother, who expressed concern for her daughter's mental state and specifically requested that the responding officers not harm her. Despite these warnings, the system failed Sonya. Just 2 days before her death, she called 911 to report that someone was trying to hurt her. Later, she reported that a neighbor had attacked her with a brick. These incidents were clear indicators that Sonya was in a state of crisis, yet the responses she received were inadequate, and her growing mental health issues were not properly addressed. Enter Deputy Sean Grayson, a 30-year-old officer with a checkered history in law enforcement. Grayson had only recently joined the Sangamon County Sheriff's Department after a series of short stints at other law enforcement agencies. His personnel records revealed a troubling pattern of impulsive decision-making, filing inaccurate reports, and a history of disciplinary issues. Despite these red flags, he was hired and put on the front lines without the necessary oversight or support. On the night of July 6th, Grayson, along with his partner, responded to Sonya's call about a prowler. What should have been a routine check turned deadly when, after a tense exchange, Sonya was shot in her own home. Grayson later claimed that he feared for his life after Sonya, holding a pot of boiling water, stated, "I rebuke you in the name of Jesus." He interpreted her words as a threat, but body camera footage and witness accounts tell a different story. One of a woman who was more afraid than threatening, and an officer who escalated a situation that could have been de-escalated with proper training and understanding. Sonya Massey's background, combined with the troubling history of Deputy Grayson, sets the stage for a tragedy that could have been prevented. It is a story of systemic failure, where the very institutions meant to protect and serve instead became agents of fear and ultimately death. July 6, 2024 was a warm summer night in Springfield, Illinois, but inside Sonya Massey's home, a storm was brewing. Just before 1 a.m., Sonya dialed 911, reporting a prowler outside her home. For someone already struggling with her mental health, the fear of an intruder must have been overwhelming. She sought help from the authorities, hoping for protection, but what she received was far from what she expected. When Deputy Sean Grayson and his partner arrived at Sonya's house, The situation was already tense. The body camera footage from that night provides a haunting glimpse into the final moments of Sonya's life. The deputies entered her home cautiously, aware of her distress, but seemingly unaware of her recent mental health struggles. In the footage, Sonya can be seen moving towards her kitchen, where a pot of water was boiling on the stove. She grabs the pot, intending to pour the water into the sink. At this moment, the atmosphere becomes charged. The deputies, standing in the living room, take a step back, their body language signaling unease. "What are you doing?" Sonya asks, her voice carrying a mixture of confusion and concern. It's a simple question, yet it seems to unsettle the officers. Then, in a moment that would later be replayed countless times, Sonya says the words that would ultimately seal her fate. "I rebuke you in the name of Jesus." In many Black communities, this phrase is a common way to dismiss a negative force or call upon divine protection. For Sonya, it was likely a desperate attempt to regain some sense of control, to protect herself in a situation spiraling beyond her control. But to Deputy Grayson, it was perceived as a direct threat. Grayson later claimed that he believed Sonya was about to attack him with the boiling water. He said he feared for his life, interpreting her words as a prelude to violence. But the body camera footage, which tragically cuts off just before the fatal shots are fired, tells a different story. After Sonya's declaration, Grayson can be heard shouting at her to drop the pot. There is panic in his voice, and Sonya, seemingly startled by his aggression, ducks and apologizes. But Grayson's response is swift and brutal. He draws his gun, shouting that he will shoot her in the face if she doesn't comply. In the moments that followed, Sonya, now blocked from the camera's view, was fatally shot. Sounds from the body cam are disturbing as you hear her gasping for air as the officers leave her laying in her own pool of blood. The bullet entered beneath her eye, exiting through the back of her neck, a single devastating wound that ended her life. The aftermath was chaotic. Grayson was taken to his patrol car by a fellow officer who advised him not to speak about what had happened until he had legal counsel. Meanwhile, Sonya lay on her kitchen floor, her life extinguished in an instant. The deputies' accounts of the incident varied. Grayson claimed that Sonya had raised the pot above her head and thrown its contents at him, forcing him to fire in self-defense. However, other officers on the scene noted that Sonya was not making any aggressive movements when she was shot. The fact that Grayson turned on his body camera just before the shooting raises further questions about his actions and intentions. This tragic night left a mother dead, a community in shock, and a nation grappling with the implications of yet another case of police violence against an unarmed Black person. The circumstances surrounding Sonya Massey's death would soon become a focal point in the ongoing debate about police misconduct, particularly in cases involving mental health crises. The moments leading up to Sonya Massey's death are as disturbing as they are revealing. As the body camera footage captured, the encounter escalated rapidly after Sonya's now infamous words, "I rebuke you in the name of Jesus." Deputy Sean Grayson, already on edge, reacted with a level of aggression that shocked many who later reviewed the footage. Grayson's account of the shooting, detailed in the official reports, paints a picture of a deputy who claimed to be in fear for his life. He stated that he believed Sonya was about to throw boiling water at him and his partner, a perceived threat that he says left him with no choice but to use deadly force. However, this narrative is starkly contrasted by other accounts and the body camera footage, which fails to show any aggressive movement from Sonya. Witnesses and other deputies who arrived on the scene described a chaotic aftermath. Grayson was acting ignorant and shared some choice words calling her a bitch, and in the confusion, several crucial protocols were ignored. Notably, Grayson failed to turn on his body camera until the shooting had occurred, a violation of department policy that has raised serious questions about the transparency and accountability of the entire incident. As more details emerged, it became clear that the shooting was not just a tragic accident, but a culmination of systemic failures. Grayson's history of impulsive behavior and poor decision-making had been well documented, yet he was still placed in a position where split-second decisions could mean life or death. The lack of communication and the failure to de-escalate the situation reflect a broader issue within law enforcement, one where officers are often ill-equipped to handle situations involving individuals in mental health crises. In the days following the shooting, the Sangamon County Sheriff's Department launched an internal investigation. Grayson, however, refused to cooperate, declining to answer questions about his actions that night. His refusal to participate in the investigation only fueled public outrage and cast further doubt on the integrity of the law enforcement response. The autopsy report revealed that Sonya died from a single gunshot wound to the head, with the bullet entering beneath her eye and exiting through the back of her neck. The report also noted that no aggressive movements were recorded on the body camera before the shooting. Sonya was simply standing in her kitchen, holding a pot of water. This unnecessary escalation of force, combined with Grayson's failure to use non-lethal alternatives or even communicate effectively, led to the tragic and avoidable death of Sonya Massey. The incident has since sparked widespread protests and reignited debates over police conduct, especially in cases involving mental health and racial bias. As the investigation continued, more disturbing details about Grayson's past and the department's handling of the situation came to light, painting a damning picture of a system that not only failed Sonya Massey, but continues to fail countless others like her. The tragic death of Sonya Massey is not just a story about one woman and one officer, it's a reflection of deeper, systemic issues that plague law enforcement across the United States. These issues, rooted in inadequate training, poor oversight, and systemic biases, create an environment where tragic outcomes like Sonya's are all too common. One of the most glaring issues highlighted by this case is the lack of proper training for officers in handling situations involving mental health crises. Sonya Massey's mental health struggles were well documented, with multiple interactions with law enforcement in the days leading up to her death. Despite this, the officers who responded to her 911 call on July 6, 2024, were seemingly unaware of her condition. This lack of communication between different branches of law enforcement and emergency services created a dangerous gap in understanding, leading to a response that was more focused on control than care. Moreover, Deputy Sean Grayson's history within law enforcement raises serious concerns about the standards and practices for hiring and retaining officers. Grayson's personnel records reveal a pattern of impulsive behavior, poor decision-making, and a disregard for protocol, issues that had been flagged by multiple supervisors in his previous roles. Yet, despite these red flags, he was allowed to continue serving in a capacity that ultimately led to Sonya's death. This points to a systemic failure in accountability, where officers with problematic histories are not adequately screened or monitored. Another critical issue is the pervasive racial bias that influences how police officers interact with communities of color. The fear and aggression exhibited by Grayson during his encounter with Sonya Massey are not isolated incidents, but part of a broader pattern of disproportionate use of force against Black individuals. This bias, whether conscious or unconscious, exacerbates situations that might otherwise be de-escalated, turning them into deadly encounters. The failure to use non-lethal alternatives, despite clear opportunities to do so, further underscores the need for reform. In Sonya's case, the situation could have been handled with a less confrontational approach, one that recognized her mental state and sought to calm rather than control her. Instead, the decision to escalate to deadly force was made swiftly and without adequate justification. Sonya Massey's death is a sobering reminder of the urgent need for systemic change in law enforcement. It highlights the critical gaps in training, accountability, and communication that must be addressed to prevent further tragedies. As the call for justice continues, it is clear that addressing these systemic issues is not just necessary, but imperative. Sonya Massey's death is a stark reminder of the deep flaws within our law enforcement system. A mother, a daughter, a woman in distress, she reached out for help, only to have her life taken by those meant to protect her. The tragic events of July 6, 2024, have left her family and community devastated, and the nation grappling with yet another instance of police violence against an unarmed Black person. As we reflect on Sonya's story, it's clear that her death was not an isolated incident, but a symptom of a much larger problem. The systemic issues that contributed to her death, lack of mental health training, inadequate communication within law enforcement, and racial bias, are pervasive and must be addressed to prevent further tragedies. The failure of Deputy Sean Grayson and the Sangamon County Sheriff's Department to de-escalate the situation and provide the care that Sonya needed is a sobering example of the urgent need for reform. Grayson's history of impulsive behavior and poor decision-making should have disqualified him from serving in a capacity where lives were at stake, yet he was allowed to continue, with devastating consequences. The call for justice for Sonya Massey is not just about holding one officer accountable. It's about demanding systemic change. It's about ensuring that those in positions of power are properly trained, monitored, and held to the highest standards. It's about creating a system where every individual, regardless of race or mental health status, is treated with dignity and respect. As we remember Sonya Massey, let her story be a catalyst for change, a change that is long overdue. The time to act is now, before another life is needlessly lost. If you believe in justice for Sonya, consider supporting organizations that are fighting for police reform and accountability. Together, we can honor her memory by working to create a safer and more just society for all. Thank you for watching. If you believe in standing up for those who can't speak for themselves, make sure you subscribe to the channel and join the Rev Gang family today. Together, we can keep fighting for the voiceless and make a real difference in the world. Love and light to all until next time.